Good afternoon. I'm Meg Whalen. I'm the Director of Communications and External Relations for the College of Arts and Architecture, and welcome to the Live Wire. Today we have with us a professor from the Department of Theater, Robin Witt. She teaches directing and is also a director professionally in Chicago and other places. And she's directing the current production that opens tomorrow night in the Black Box Theater of Robinson Hall. It's called 448 Psychosis, and it's by a British playwright, Sarah Kane. It's a very experimental work, so Robin's going to tell us a little bit about what to expect when we see this play and give us some context for its presentation and its creation. So welcome, Robin. And start off by telling us a little bit about the playwright Sarah Kane, who she was, and what kind of work she created.
Sarah Kane began writing plays in 1995, and her first play was called Blasted, and it opened at the Royal Court upstairs. It was a little 60-seat house, and it was indeed blasted by the critics because it was incendiary, it was provocative, it was visceral, it was confrontational, all those things that have later been called, a few years later, by Alex Sears, a scholar and critic, a UK scholar and critic. He calls it in-your-face genre. And so Sarah Kane really was one of the playwrights that jumped off in pushing that genre forward. There's some other playwrights during that time as well. Tracy Letts, he is the writer of August Osage County. Some people may know that as a Tony Award-winning play, or the film that just came out. And in the 90s, he wrote a couple of plays, in particular, Killer Joe, which is part of that genre. And you know, I think, Meg, they actually made a movie of that last year as well. Yeah. And one of the other playwrights that is considered an in-your-face playwright is Martin McDonagh. He wrote The Beauty Queen of Leenane, The Cripple of Inishmaan, and folks might know him as the director or screenwriter for In Bruges, which was also nominated for an Oscar a few years ago. So it's this genre that came about in the 90s as a reaction against maybe the political correctness of the 70s and 80s and of the conservative movement politically at that time as well. Sarah Kane unfortunately took her own life a few years after her first play debuted. She was 28 years old when she passed, and she had written 448. That was her last play, 448 Psychosis. She wrote that play and then committed suicide, and then 448 was produced after her death, which one of the things I didn't know when we started planning on doing this play this February is that we are exactly at the 15th anniversary of her death. She killed herself on February 19th, 20th. They don't know in the middle of the night exactly when that happened. But although her plays have been very provocative when they first appeared and got a lot of very mixed reviews, she is now considered one of the most important playwrights of the late part of the 20th century, an English-speaking playwright.
Right. I know that we have a Sarah Kane specialist coming to campus during the time of the presentation of the play. Tell me a little bit about who that is and what the topic of conversation will be.
Yes, it's Dr. Ryan Claycomb. He's coming from the University of West Virginia, and he has written extensively about in-your-face, Sarah Kane, feminism, and playwriting as autobiography. And so that's why it sort of fits in very well, in fact, with the play. This is, some critics, when this play was first produced in 2000, called it a 40-page suicide note. But in fact, if you look at her correspondence with her agent, she was really delving into the marriage of form and content. And I think she was incredibly brave to put onto paper things that would be perceived as her personal biography. I think it would be wrong of us not to acknowledge that she, right after she completed this work, that she did take her own life but I didn't want to lead from that. I think there is a struggle for identity. It's a struggle to bring these fragmented parts of one person into a whole, and it's a very noble struggle.
So I think that concept of marrying form and content is really interesting, and that is the big challenge of producing a play like this. So I think we ought to talk a little bit about what that really means. Why don't we talk first about content in terms of very briefly why is this play called 448 Psychosis, and what is just the general idea of the content, and then maybe we can talk about the form both as it's presented as a script and also as you're going to present it as a production.
Great. 448 Psychosis, the name comes from this, in the play there, the protagonist, the subject we're calling this character, wakes up at 4:48 almost every night with this clarity of vision. And it's this clarity of vision that something needs to change drastically in order for her to go forward. And she names it sometimes metaphorically as a hatch opening, stark light, and sometimes she says quite boldly and baldly, I'm going to kill myself, I am done. And so that's how the name came about, 448. It's the time of night that the subject would wake up and experience what she calls, or he calls, a moment of clarity. The play is incredibly interesting. It is nonlinear. There are 24 sections to it, and the way that the play, the text, the words fit on the page are sometimes just as important as what the words actually mean. So there's 24 sections, and what we have done with these sections is we're experimenting with form as well as a department. What we have done is that we've split up the play into three sections, and we are presenting them in three different parts of the black box. And we are expecting the audience, we're going to split them up into thirds as well, and we're going to have the audience promenade style go from one section to the next. And the larger idea, of course, is that this person is fragmented, and she's trying desperately to pull her life together and to complete a whole. And it's a very broken world that we're creating. But also the thing that is so wonderful about splitting up that space is that we are going to be able to give the audience a really intimate experience, because there will be 25 folks, audience members in each of the sections, and they'll be able to be right there in the action. And what's so wonderful about that is not only are they going to be observers, but in some way they might also feel like they're a participant.
Right.
Yeah.
We actually have, I think, visually an image of the script. Mm-hmm. And so on the screen is a page of 448 Psychosis, and this visually represents kind of that experimentation with form in terms of the way she wrote it and presented it, and already just gives you a sense of that fragmentation. Right. And also, there are no characters. I don't see any characters or stage directions. Tell us a little bit about what it's like for the actors to encounter a script that looks like this as opposed to a more traditional presentation of the text.
It's very exciting for all of us, because what that text demands from us as artists is that we be colleagues with the playwright in creating this piece. I have a lot of experience of working with this sort of abstract, dense work, and I find it thrilling, because what is demanded from me is something very different than a text which has its own challenges, a text that is more traditional. And so what we were able to do, I have a fantastic student co-director who we worked on this piece. I'm just looking at the script. We worked on a little bit of this piece in class last year, and she was very much drawn to it. And she actually was the one who figured out, as you're looking at the script, these numbers are 191, 84, 81. And what this is the subject trying to count backwards by 7 which evidently is what you are supposed to do when you are troubled. The doctors try to find out if you're lucid and if you're able to count back. And as you can see, this person is not lucid in this moment and cannot count backwards. But also, if you turn the text the other way, it also could look a little bit like a heartbeat. If you draw the 100 down to the 42 and just go up and down, an erratic heartbeat. And so, how do you represent that in space, in real time with an actor? And those sorts of questions are incredibly exciting, because what is asked of us is something very different than a typical play script. And I'm hoping that what we have come up with, it will be something that is moving and visceral experience for the audience.
I have just a few pictures of the upcoming production. So let's take a look at these, and you can maybe tell us. So we have basically 3 sections of our black box theater in Robinson Hall, which is literally a big black box. And so it'll be divided up, and action will be going on simultaneously in these 3 areas, depicting sections that you have created out of the 24 smaller pieces.
Right, that's
and you
correct.
have that authority as a director to conceive of this in a way that you think is powerful, which is sort of a neat thing in and of itself. You're not bound by a kind of script that would delineate exactly how you're supposed to do it. So tell us what those 3 sections are and how we'll experience them.
Yes, I would like to start with the audience's experience at the very top in the lobby. There will be a crew going by and giving them a wristband, and each wristband has a color to it, and there's 3 different colors. And so whatever color your wristband is, ultimately will be the section you will begin at. And so it's going to start very much in the lobby, and then you're going to be brought in, and there's going to be an explanation of what is going to happen in the evening and how the audience will be moving clockwise through the space from one section to the next. And the 3 sections that we came up with, and all 3 of these titles are things that occur over and over in the text. And the one that you're looking at right now on the screen is what we call the waiting room. And it is the more traditionally acted out of all 3 of the sections. It's realism, naturalism, and this is the subject. We're calling the protagonist in this play, because there are no character names. We're calling her the subject, and we also have the doctor. And so we have put together all the sections that have the subject with the doctor speaking in them. And so
those sections occur randomly throughout the script that you
yes.
have. They do not occur as a chunk together.
No, they don't.
In print.
So we pulled them together in order to carry out what our larger idea was. And it was really my co-director, my student, a very talented senior named Kara Foster, who actually came up with this idea. And at first I said, oh, no. And then I was thinking about more and more about it, and how exciting this could actually be for us to really get our hands in and tell the story in a way that's never been told before. And this is what we're calling the Cage of Tears. It is something that the playwright talks about in the text. There is the Cage of Tears that the protagonist is in. And what you don't see right now is all of the makeup. And these pictures were taken just a couple of days ago, so we're not quite finished with the design. But we have the protagonist will be over there on the left in the gray T-shirt, and what we're calling is the alter ego is on the other side. And this is really the battle between staying in the real world and being pulled into the darker side. And the alter ego is really trying to keep the subject from going over to the other end. And so it's a real battle in this Cage of Tears on who's going to win.
I think we have
And that's another one where she is desperately trying to get out of the cage, and she's being held back by the alter ego. Yeah. And this is a great picture, because you can see in the background we have the waiting room over there. So all 3 of these are going to be happening simultaneously. And we've worked very long and hard to try to keep the focus in each one of these little sections. But part of the experience, too, is for the audience to experience what that fragmentation is like. So the audience will be hearing echoes of the other section when they're at their own section.
Right.
But this is the dancing on glass, and we have a chorus. Well, what we tried to do in this piece is incorporate several dramatic modes, forms of dramatic expression. And so we have a Greek chorus, our reimagining of a Greek chorus that's in the dancing on glass section that has the subject, interacts with the subject. And here is towards the end of the play, there's sort of a moment where she is elevated and moves through the space there. And so you can see the platform behind is the glass that she will be dancing on in that section. One of the things I'd like to say to the audience is that when they're coming in is that it's about an hour long, and we are expecting most audience members to be standing throughout it. We do have one section where they can sit, so they do have a respite in it, and so it's one of those things where we're hoping they're going to get right up close into the action and be there. And so we are making some demands on the audience that is not normally made, I think, at the university.
Have you seen a production of 448 Psychosis before?
Yes, and it's really unusual. I usually don't direct plays that I've seen before for a variety of different reasons. And so, but I did see this one a very, very long time ago in Chicago in the Steppenwolf Garage by an incredibly talented company called The Hypocrites. And very different from our production, because this text really asks of you so many different things that you can interpret in any way you'd like. And so Sean Graney, who's an incredible director, did a really wonderful sort of whimsical job on more of a circus atmosphere that he created for 448. I will say the original production only had 3 actors in it. And there was so much interest in the play by our theater students that I wanted to give as many actors an opportunity to work on it as possible. So that also was a consideration as we were trying to put this piece together.
So is the chorus, the Greek chorus that you have, is there any text that chorus has that's part?
Yes.
Yes. So you took just text that existed and attributed it to
this chorus.
To this chorus.
And they interact with each other, and they interact with the subject. The subject is a dance major with a theater minor, and so she's mostly in movement as the chorus explains what she is going through, and in fact sometimes impacts what she's going through. So it's really quite unusual, and it's our sort of nod towards another dramatic form.
And how many students in total are part of the production?
We have nine total as actors, and then of course we have all of our crew, our students as well, majors, and we also. I'm very excited because we also have some designers that are students, which doesn't always happen in the department, which has been very fun to work with. A costume designer who is a student, and also our light designer is a student. We have a student dramaturg named Caroline K. Adams, and she has a wonderful Tumblr site called With a Killing Smile, and if you hashtag UNCC, hashtag Sarah Kane, you will get to it pretty easily. And we've been maintaining a rehearsal log, any musings that any of the actors have had, and also Caroline's own thoughts about the play.
And also you've had a former theater student, a theater alumna, right, who is getting a master's in social work?
Yes.
Being a part of the conception of this. Tell us a little bit about how that's been and what that has brought to the students' experience and how that connects to the larger, I guess, our larger experience of it.
Jenny Wade is a graduate student at MSW. And she graduated from the theater department, and I don't know how many years ago. And she is doing an independent project using 448 Psychosis. And what's been so great about having her around is she has become our sort of expert on mental illness, and she's also brought in a psychologist to talk to us. There's a lot of mention of different kinds of medications that go on, and there's we were given we had to do a lot of research on the impact of those medications, and also what really mental illness this subject is going through. What is her diagnosis? And so Jenny's been really great bringing that in, and also starting the conversation, being some concern about the actors who are working on it, because it can be such a dark piece, how that's affecting them as artists. And one of the things I keep trying to reinforce is what a gift this play is, because we were able to go to these places and pull them out, and that we really need to know that we are in control of that, because we're actors in control of our emotions, as opposed to letting that go away. And so it's been a really great, I think, experience for our students to walk that fine line of delving into something emotional, but also knowing that this is a craft, this is an art form, and that we need to do this again every night, and we need to keep ourselves safe in order to do that again.
And I guess that's true in a way for the audience too, because on the one hand you think, okay, this is really dark, this is really disturbing, you know, why encounter it as an audience member? Why subject yourself to that kind of darkness? But I guess, you know, art is the safe place where we can explore those things and experience them and try to identify with people who suffer from these problems, or whatever it is. In this particular case, it happens to be someone suffering from extreme depression. Or so that's kind of an interesting thing about art providing that safe place to really grapple with very complex and upsetting sometimes issues.
Yes, and we're also in our program, we have a section where resources to get help. We're hoping, of course, it's going to start a conversation. But I think, Meg, that's such an interesting thing. Like, why should an audience come and see something that is so dark? For me, for theater, why I do it and why I like to be the host of that evening, and what really does me proud and makes me feel so in touch with the world, is that I provide a place where people can come and be as a community, and to feel not so alone in the world.
Right.
So what you're seeing perhaps is something that maybe you have experienced or a friend has experienced, and it may not necessarily be mental illness, it might be addiction, it might be grief, it might be something else, and for people to come and see it and not feel so isolated and alone. And that, for me, is why I create theater, because I go to theater and get that feeling, and for me, there's nothing really like that.
And especially in this production, the intimacy of the experience and the audiences, you'll be put in this small group of people who will be sharing it with you, and there's almost an extra sense of community, I think, in just wearing those bracelets and being part of that little group together to kind of enter into this nightmare, really, in a way, but be there together in it and come out of it together. So that's an interesting way to present it to the public.
Yes.
You and I have talked before about how in the arts and in the performing arts, such as theater, performance is a form of research. We're a research university. We talk about research a lot as an institution and the value and the importance of it, and whereas often we'll think of that in terms of scientific research or economic research or archaeological research, we do research in performing arts through performance. So tell me a little bit about how that works with this production and then your own research that you do.
This is the first time I've been able to direct a play in the season that relates exactly to my research. The kinds of plays that I do are very brand new plays from the UK and Ireland that deal with the rough texture of contemporary life, that can be considered, a lot of them, in the in-your-face genre, that the characters live in a hard scrabble world and they're trying to persevere in the face of just so many great odds of them finding happiness. And so these are the kinds of plays that I really enjoy. I'm actually a really happy person, but to walk on the dark side, I'm very much drawn to that struggle. And so what's been so great is I'm working on a play that is in that genre or in my research area, and I am able to share that with my students. And of course I share my plays that I work on with my students in other ways, like in my play analysis class. We'll always be reading one of the plays that I'm going to be currently working on, which is fantastic because I can steal all of my students' ideas as I go forward, which is really great. But so this, for me, is very exciting because it's the first time that I'm actually being able to meld these two together, and I'm really, it's very satisfying. It's a very satisfying experience.
I want to show one additional image before we finish. This is a striking picture of a piano on fire. Tell me why this is associated with your production and what it's all about.
Well, we have a sound design professor in Robinson Hall named Ben Stickles, and he found an audio of somebody playing a piano as it was being lit on fire. And Sarah Kane was very much influenced by Artaud and this idea of cruelty, theater of cruelty, and elegant cruelty. And so one of our phrases as we were working on this piece is elegant cruelty. And there was nothing, I think, more fascinating in using that phrase than having a piano that's on fire with a beautiful playing with then this roar and rush. And so Ben decided, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to find our own piano and we're going to videotape it, because we have projection in the play as well, and he wanted to use that as part of the projection for 448. And so he found a piano that somebody wanted that wasn't really working very well, that somebody was giving away, and he secured it and brought it to campus and got permission to do this. And so they set the piano on fire. Now, they weren't able to play it while it was being set on fire for safety reasons.
And looking at it, I'm glad no one was playing it as the keyboard is actually on fire. It would be a little hot.
But it's a wonderful image that really talks about this idea of elegant cruelty and the beauty that's also always embedded, I think, in pain.
And so will we hear this as well as see projection of it? We'll actually hear that sound in some
We will hear that sound. There's a dance interlude in Dancing on Glass, and we're using the piano being lit on fire during that section. And then there's another, during transition sections, you will hear the roar of the piano being burnt. Yes. And you'll see the projections as well.
Well, I hope that people will come from across campus and experience this really interesting and unusual production that you've put together. Very experimental for Charlotte. And I think it places our department right at the edge of theater production in this city. I mean, there really is no other theater company that's doing this kind of work. A lot of contemporary work, but this kind of really in your face, which is in your Y-E-R face, I discovered.
Right, yes.
So the performances begin tomorrow night, February 19th. Everything's at 7:30 except for Sunday, the 23rd, I guess, which is at 2 o'clock.
Yes.
And tickets are available online at our College of Arts and Architecture website, coaa.uncc.edu, and at the box office in Robinson Hall. Thank you so much for joining us for The Live Wire.